Hi guys, welcome to Syncromystic. I'm Wayne McCroy. This is Richard Willett, and together we're going to take apart the narratives in the mainstream news cycle that are steering and directing things in the world right now, and we're going to look at the occult connotations present therein and show that this death cult that's running the world is in full-fledged panic mode at this point, and they are throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. How are you today, Richard? A lot
Um,
has happened since we spoke last, my friend.
it really has. I'm good, thank you. I'm just been back from a kids' party, so that was mental. Took the kids to the party this morning, so I come back here. Been looking forward to this. It's been about 3 weeks since we recorded the last one. Thank you to everybody who's been watching, and we've got thousands of views now, and it's just really picking up because you're not going to find this anywhere else. But yeah, it's. I just said to you before we started recording, it is like watching a freak show now. Like the freaks have come out. The death cult, it's not only, it's just put its most freakiest weirdos at the front, and now they're not being held back. Just go and do the weird stuff whilst we get on with it in the background, because I mean, over your our side is bad, but our side is British freaky. Yours is American carnival freaky, like Donald Trump. I don't even know where to. That guy is like Krusty the Clown on meth, isn't he? What's going on?
Oh man, it's a mess. Like politically, the world is a mess right now, and Donald Trump, of course, is at the center of the freak show, as you call it, right there. And certainly, we see all of that going on because here's the thing: they're trying to roll out digital ID across the world, and they're using you guys over there in the UK to try to be the test subject for the Western rollout here. And there's a lot of pushback against that, but you don't hear much about that here in the US. Instead, what they've done on this same day, it was actually today, you guys were having a rally there, a protest against the digital ID. Well, today here in America, what they've done again is they've scheduled another No Kings event where they protest Donald Trump just because they don't like him. And it's not their guy doing things. So there's been a lot of push in the US here to try to get people out to rally in the streets of cities around the country to protest the things going on with Donald Trump's grab for power as they see it. And of course, some of the things they're complaining about are very much legitimate, but it's a distraction from the bigger things going on. And that's what we have going on right now. They put Donald Trump back in office for a reason. He's a great distraction. He's like a carnival barker. I love the analogy you give there, Richard, of it being like a freak show. It is. It's like a carnival. It's like a carnival sideshow. And Donald Trump is out there yelling about this and that and the other thing and directing people, and people eat it up and they follow along like sheep. And you have it on both sides of the aisle here politically in the political spectrum. And it's really taken on a life of its own. And it is a sort of type of what you would call in the occult an egregore. There's a spirit behind it. And certainly, this spirit that's behind all of it has everything to do with Zionism and the counter to Zionism. And of course, this goes back to this battle we've been speaking about behind the scenes at the topmost levels of the power structure in this world as to who gets to call the shots with what. They always have this type of infighting going on, and it's all backroom deals going on with many of these people. And Donald Trump is center stage right now. He is like the proverbial carnival barker out there directing the crowds and the social engineering and trying to steer the stories and the narratives that hit the mainstream. And of course, we see that's exactly what goes on. He puts out a point, and the mainstream media puts out a counterpoint. And there you have the Hegelian control scheme
Mhm.
all at once being infiltrated into the minds of the people constantly. You're inundated from all sides, whether it's social media, television, newspapers, whatever it may be. You're hearing the Republican side here in America and the Democrat side. They've divided it up along those party lines here. And they feed you information and misinformation on both sides to get people infighting over things of no real importance or value while they push along the agendas that they want in play. And it doesn't matter who's in charge. Two wings, same bird. And we've said this all before. But of course, there's a spirit behind this whole movement, and it is the spirit of Zionism that rides behind all of it. And maybe we could explore those avenues of thought a little bit further, because this goes back to who it is that actually runs things for real in this world. What I would call the dark occultists who run things in this world. And certainly they're behind the scenes working at this. And a lot of people have conflated this spirit of Zionism with something that it totally is not. It's not the Jewish people, first and foremost. It's not those who follow the Jewish faith or religion. Okay, they've weaponized that. They've used that, much like they do with everything else. These people behind the scenes, these dark occultists who run things at the top, they've used that as a front, as a facade, as a mask to disguise what they're doing and to deflect the blame towards a specific people group, to keep people distracted from who's really pulling the strings. And they've done this par excellence.
Mm.
They have so many people focused on, oh, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. It's not the Jews. William Cooper came out back in the 1990s and was trying to tell people it's not the Jews. There is a Jewish influence involved. Yes, this has more to do with the Zohar and the Kabbalah and all of these things that occurred after the fall of the temple in 70 AD. But it's not the Jews primarily. There is this group within that uses that facade as a vehicle to get things done. And it uses the principles of Kabbalah, which are backed through the Zohar and through the Talmud and everything else, to get things done. And it uses these belief systems against people. And that's what people have a hard time understanding. This is the spirit of Zionism. This has nothing to do with the Jewish faith or the Jewish people. And that's a broad term in and of itself, and it causes confusion. And as we covered in episode 2 of Syncromystic here, Richard, Kabbalah, we broke down the etymology of the word Kabbalah spelled with a K. It means confusion.
Yep.
It's designed that way on purpose. So they describe the Jews or the Jewish people. Well, who is that? First of all, is it a religion? Is it a political nation state? Is it a race or an ethnicity? You tell me. There's so many different ways. They keep the definition of what this is very loose for that reason, to create this confusion, because
Yep.
in confusion there is profit to be made. And that's what a lot of these people that have fallen into these leadership roles and positions in the world here today are really seeking after, is that profit to be made. You see, they benefit from the confusion and the chaos, and they like to try to instill order out of that chaos. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this, Richard.
It's fascinating exactly what you say there. So one of the things I try to give examples of what you say, and I agree with everything you just said there. In terms of Zionism, I would conflate that with chaos. It is just a chaos engine. And with the thing with chaos, their god is chaos. You can't label it. You might give it a name like Yaldabaoth or Yahweh, or you might call it the Lucifer or Satan. It's an, as you say, it's an energy, but it's a chaotic energy that can't, they don't like to label them completely. They like to confuse it because that's the point. The whole point is you're supposed to be able to grasp hold of this, but they're trying to materialistically push you down into this world to control you. They know that they need to keep things vague to not be able to be targeted. So they give things like Tommy Robinson. This is an example. Tommy Robinson today, he's gone over there. I call him the Kindle of the UK, or the kindling. He caused a problem over here, sparks it off, runs over to Israel to lick the wall like they always do. And he has been given a shirt with the number 11 on it. Well, when you look at the number, it says Israel and number 11. When you look at the number 11 and the Kabbalah kind of connotations to that, that's really mixed. On one roll, sorry, 11 means like chaos. And then it means basically soiling the pot, putting something evil in there, but it's a necessary evil. And then on the other side, it means enlightenment within that chaos. So Tommy probably doesn't have a clue what they mean by giving him that shirt, because it means two opposites at the same time. They always have to give you the polarities, and they'll tell you one thing when it means the absolute opposite, because they're using you. And this is exactly what they've done. So when you come to, I've been looking into the hexagram now. The hexagram is obviously a hex. It's a what do you call it, a spell. When you it's a portal. When these dark occultists, Crowley was one, they used the hexagram and the pentagram, um, inside a pentagon, and that's the outside of it. So the six-pointed star has the hexagram in the middle. There's a reason why that's on the Israeli flag. It's because it's used as a portal to invite and invoke demons in. And that's why it's blue, because blue brings it's the light shift. So the light coming towards you is blue, and it gets more red going away. Now look at this back. Go back to World War Two. Who funded most of what was happening? So the Jews, and I say the Jews, not the Jews of the Israeli, the original Israeli tribes. Obviously, they're European. But it's a faith, anyone can be Jewish. So those who were treated horrifically during World War Two, that was funded by the Rothschilds, the Red Shield. It's the Red Star. So the Red Star pushed the Jews of World War Two who were horrifically treated towards Israel. And what happened on the other end? They used the Blue Star instead of the Red Star to draw the Jews in to that land because it was all part of an alchemical spell. This is what they're doing. They're creating spells, and what me and Wayne have been doing for years now in terms of Wayne and me catching up with Wayne the last couple of years trying to. It's a spell. These are alchemists. They know exactly what they're doing. So they've cast a spell over the whole Jewish faith, who are not really of the original Israel tribes, to believe that they are, but they're being used to push out this messianic agenda that has no care for those who believe they're of the Jewish faith at all, because they weren't originally Jewish. They were originally Sabbatean and cultists and Satanists who took on and hid within these different faiths, including Christianity, including Islam, including Judaism. That's why they all have satanic symbology hidden within their own symbology. So at the heart of Israel, the Israeli flag, the six-pointed star, is the hex. They've cast a spell on those of the Jewish faith to be used as cannon fodder. And they've been brainwashed to think the world hates them. That's the spell. So when you see Tommy Robinson going over there, giving it all of this about the set, he's been brainwashed. Spells, hexagram, the hexagon goes around the side. The hexagon in 2D form is a hexagon, and in 3D it's the cube of Saturn. This stuff is already out there, and we're starting to put this together very, very quickly now, and they know that, and I think. And yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what I've just kind of splurted out there, but it's a spell, and that spell has gathered all of these people in, and all that energy is creating, as you say, an egregore, which is their god, the god of chaos. Seth Tython, I've heard it called, but it's called many names. It's the evil creator god, whatever name you give it.
Right? And the Gnostics would refer to this as the demiurge,
Yeah.
right? And you could cross the bounds of all these different belief systems, and you're describing all the same things, certainly. So there's a lot to unpack in everything you just were talking about there, Richard. First of all, the hexagram, that symbol in and of itself, is actually a representation of what's known as Metatron's cube. And that in and of itself is a hugely important thing that would require many hours to unpack. But just going back to what you were talking about with the blue, the color blue, the blue hexagram, and of course Rothschild, the red shield, these are invoking the basic gender archetypes, the masculine and the feminine. The red represents the masculine, the blue represents the feminine. And this is one of the important parts. Of course, it's always this duality system. It's the twin pillars, the Joaquin and Boaz, pillars of Freemasonry, Chokmah and Bina in the Kabbalah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about playing to the center or taking the shortcut to enlightenment, which is called Dayat, up through the center, the central pillar of the Kabbalah and of the Tree of Life. So essentially, we have this red shield Rothschild that represents the masculine energy, and of course, the blue on the hexagram field representing the feminine energy, or the Shekinah, the feminine side, the god of goddess, the goddess of Judaism, also equated to Lady Wisdom, the Queen of Heaven. All of these other terms have been used. The bride of Yahweh, and this is an important thing in the Judaic overall religious structure that has arisen since the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. Now, all of these things align in a way wherein you're actually looking at a type of a spiritual energy, as we've spoken of, which we would refer to as an egregore. And I think it might be important that we touch upon the meaning of what exactly is an egregore in order to have a better understanding of what has been done here in the modern world and how they have used this egregore, also now known as Zionism, as the main conduit of some of the political theater that goes on in the world around us. So, an egregore is a word that is Greek in origin, from egregoros, meaning wakeful or watcher. Watcher. Now, this has a lot of different connotations, especially in the biblical context. And going back to the book of Enoch, Enoch is ascribed the book of Enoch, and he was the grandfather of Noah. And this is not considered canon in the Bible, but it does go along with the book of Genesis, and it describes things in further detail that are outlined in the book of Genesis. So there's a portion of the book of Enoch called the book of Watchers, and this describes wherein the fallen angelic beings came down and they mated with human women, and they had offspring called the Nephilim, which were reported to be giants, giants in the earth in those days. And this is where a lot of this comes from. So it's interesting because these same watchers or giants, or the beings, the fallen angelic beings, the watchers, are related one to one with this word egregore. Now, many people misconstrue egregore, and here we'll just give you the most common definition in the occult practices. It's as follows. In the occult, an egregore is an autonomous psychic entity composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people. Now, this is only one meaning. Now, information about egregores is very difficult to find. You have to really comb through a lot of different old occult works and texts to find more information about the notion of an egregore, and they don't always call them egregores in these different occult contexts. So there is a definition that's older for what an egregore is, and it's perhaps even more frightening than the initial meaning we just gave here, where it's mostly the notion that thought forms produced by a group of people take on a life of their own and a spirit of their own and begin to manifest on their own. Now, here is the older and more concerning definition of an egregore. It's the home or conduit for a specific psychic intelligence of a non human nature connecting the invisible dimensions with the material world in which we live. And this, in fact, is said to be the true source of the ancient cults and the religious magical practices thereof. So we're talking about these ancient mystery schools wherein they found their power, and this has to do with non human intelligences. These are non human intelligences that essentially influence human thought, especially group thought, the mob mentality. And this has been described in the Rosicrucian cosmoconception as a group spirit, a race spirit, a national spirit. And they also use the term genius to describe what this spiritual influence is. So essentially, an egregore is this type of a spiritual influence. And this is something that's hugely concerning, especially when you have the arisal of a spiritual intelligence like this that influences massive numbers of people in certain ways, and you can ascribe the name Zionism to it. And what exactly are we looking at in the world today? It's taken on a life of its own. And this transcends just the players involved on the world stage. This affects people, like people groups all across the world in different ways. It influences the way they think about things. And this manifests in a type of a backlash against the power structure that goes concurrent with what the power structure's agendas are. And this manifests as what they would call anti Semitism. So we have this anti Semitic spirit, which is actually the Zionist spirit. It's the same thing. It's both sides, both polarities of influence at work here. They use that anti Semitic type of a nature to push back against the things that they want to manifest in this world as far as agendas go, to come to synthesis. And this always plays on polarities. Synthesis. This is what they want to get done. So you have thesis and antithesis to create synthesis. This is known as the Hegelian dialectic, and it is a spiritual component to things. And we have this Zionist spirit out there influencing this, and it's a type of egregore. It's taken on a life of its own. It does not represent a creator god or anything of that sort. It does not represent religious beliefs. It is something different. It is a separate entity that is only concerned with manifesting its own powerful influence into things. And it's a non human intelligence, and it goes beyond just the collective thought forms of these various groups. It's the genius as described by Rosicrucianism. The genius, the national genius, or the racial genius. And this all ties back to the secret doctrine. And of course, I always recommend people read The Rosicrucian Cosmoconception by Max Heindel. It will really give you a fantastic overview of what is going on in the world today. And you have to think outside the box. And you'll probably need to read through it a bunch of times if you're not familiar with some of these occult concepts, because it really, really gives you a broader view of what's going on and a more correct view of how the world actually operates behind the scenes. Because this manifests from the archetypal world, the thought world, in the spirit, and it steps down in a gradual process into materiality here, and vice versa. And materiality steps back up into the spiritual. One's a reflection of the other. And the midpoint between spirit and form is the mind. And this is the battleground, and this is where it all goes on. So I hope I'm not speaking over people's heads here. It's important that we try to lay down some of these foundations. So maybe it would be helpful if we look up the definition, the dictionary definition of what is Zionism as well, so people could see that this collective thought form has taken on a life or spirit of its own, and it's influenced by a non human spirit from the other side, and how all of these things seem to fall in place. And this connects directly with what it is we do here in breaking down this synchromystic metadata, because this is what steers and directs synchromystic metadata, is one of these genius spirits, as they were called by the Rosicrucians, or the egregore of sorts. And it's like a more highly evolved egregore at this point, is what this is. And you could find all different types of dictionary definitions thereof. But certainly it's a type of watcher spirit that guides and directs things from behind the scenes, influences human thought, and has a lot of influence and sway on those that fall under its umbrella of belief system. And this is how we see things manifest in the world in this way. So I hope this makes sense, Richard, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, while you're looking up the definition of Zionism, I'll just add to that is that an example, a classic example, and an easy to understand example of this is politics. You have your red and your blue. You had Donald Trump and Netanyahu meeting only a few weeks back. Who wore what? It depends on which way around. But at that point, Donald Trump was wearing the red tie. Netanyahu was wearing the blue tie. They do these things out in the open if you know what to look for. So red and blue, you go to the polling station, which is the pole in the middle, which is it's a polarities. They tell you in everything they do. Like prison is a cell. You put in a cell, like a battery hen because it harvests your energy. They understand the notions of energy. Another example of this, if you look into the Kabbalistic agenda, what they want at the end is to reunite Shekinah and Yahweh, who are the red, Yahweh being the red, the male, Shekinah being the blue, or Shekinah being the blue. They want to reunite those two in the temple because they used to have it off every week, which is lucky for some, in the temple at the back there in the Holy of Holies until I think something happened where Yahweh ruined the temple and Shekinah disappeared off with the Israelites for a little while. So they want to reunite them back together, which is just an allegory of this same principle of reuniting the male and female energies. But what they want to do is combine two together, not to create a synthesis, but to how do I put it? Like an atom bomb, explode them into each other, collide them into each other. It's probably the best way to put it, to start again. They use the same principles in nuclear energy. When you look into any of this stuff, and you look into Rosemary's Baby, look into the Moon Child, look into Jack Parsons, they're all around nuclear energy. They understand the nature of this energy and how to manipulate the polarities. Now, the best thing you can do is understand what the game is, and you don't get played by it because you know that they're like a pincer movement. They've got a little pair of tongs and they're pushing both sides in, and your head's in the middle. And it doesn't really matter which side. To get your head out the way, get your head out of their game and watch it because it's so simple to watch, and it is child's play. It literally is child's play because they make you like a child. Now, one thing I've looked at recently, and one thing I wanted to bring up and speak to just to run past Wayne really, is, and I've wrote it in the book that I'm writing at the moment, the term "the devil's in the details." I've started to realize that that's not what we actually think it means. The devil in the details used to mean, or classically means, oh, really look into the details of things and you'll get the meaning of it. Actually, the devil is getting too involved in the details, to your head in the sand, so you end up going round and round and round the same stuff and not getting anywhere. The devil is inviting you into the details because it's not the details that are really going to tell you the truth. Your heart knows the truth. The devil that's in the details is going to drag you in and bury your head in the sand. Yes, you need to know the details, but don't get lost in the details because the details only give you a pointer towards the truth. And all that does is solidify what you knew already. That's all it does. And
It, sorry, Richard, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're hitting it spot on. The devil in the details. This is the revelation of the method. And what this does is it creates this never ending cul de sac for you to go down, seeking out the terms of these details and getting caught on a rabbit trail. Well, quietly in the background, their agendas are being moved forward while you're busy delving into the details. And that's why a lot of these researchers in more of the, I guess you could call mainstream alternative media, get hung up on certain things. Like there's still people talking about many of the connections and stuff that can be associated back to a lot of different things that are really meaningless at this point. I
mm,
mean, we know something's burning in the kitchen, right? This is what my friend Crow 777 says all the time. You could smell it. You know something's burning in the kitchen. You might not specifically know exactly what it is, but you know what's being put out there is not the truth, and you don't need to go any further than that. Once you have this instinct from doing this stuff for long enough, you know that's bait. All right, they're going to drag you down this rabbit hole, down this cul-de-sac, and you're going to keep going over the fine points of the details over and over and over again. Still, people looking at this whole Charlie Kirk thing. This is a perfect example. They're still looking at the details, and there's a lot of people that are spending a lot of time on social media saying stuff like, oh, he couldn't have been shot with such and such a round,
mm,
and the way that they're saying, and they're looking at all these little fine details. You know what? That's not the important point right now. We need to have moved past that. There are greater agendas at play. And while you're busy delving into the fine details of this stuff, they're pushing forward their agendas all the more. It's a distraction. This is how psychological operations work. So, certainly, you're onto something. The devil in the details are there to drag you down the path to hell where you are distracted and they can pull off whatever agendas they want quietly while you're looking at the fine points of what they've already done. It's a type of revelation of the method of sorts.
mm.
So I
The
didn't mean to cut off
No,
with
no,
that.
no. It's perfect. I like to get your feedback, and especially knowing like the details. I see that as the devil's tail. The devil's tail. You just keep watching it swish left and right. It doesn't take you anywhere. It just goes round and round ways, nicking the cutlery out your kitchen. The detail is the devil's tail. It's not to say you shouldn't investigate these things, but don't get so caught up in them that you just don't move forward. I've seen people arguing about the very specific nuances in a word in the Bible for years. And I'm sitting there going, what are you doing? You, does it matter? No, well, it does, it doesn't. If you're doing it for a laugh, great. You do what you want to, but it's not going to move you forward. You are spinning your wheels with this stuff. People are still talking about the JFK assassination and whether he got shot from what angle with what and what. Does it matter? Now he's dead. He got shot, and we know they thought they're telling us is a lie. Have a look at it and put it into the context of the rest. You need to move forward with what they are doing. Yes, it's fun to look at these things, but the reason why they put these things in a film like Snake Eyes is clearly connected to the Charlie Kirk assassination because it was a film. It distracted you. It was to keep your eyes on the screen, but you're also, as we say, or get back to the subject of today's show, building this egregore of energy and feeding all your energy into that place of confusion. They want you to feel confusion. The archons are um, said to feed off of fear. Confusion, fear, anxiety, same thing to me. They all roll into one. It's that feeling of dread. It's, you know what it is. I don't have a word for it. I don't need a word for it because you know what it is. Now move on. They are feeding off that, and they're feeding off people arguing over that as well. So you know the answers. You've just got to let go, and that comes into the ego. And I find myself doing silly things like that. I'm not beyond it, but I do understand that it's a game. And whilst we are arguing over this finite things, like myself and Wayne's Christian. I'm not a Christian. We don't argue over the meanings of the Bible. He has his own beliefs. I have my own beliefs. But he's a lovely person. I'm a decent guy. Let's try and figure this out together. I don't want to argue over the nuances. I want to try and figure, like, just to discover. And I think that's the egregore feeds off of that confusion of the details. And I just think that's a really important point that no one's telling you, especially when you start doing this work. You can find yourself not move forward. Actually, you can find yourself going pretty insane within 3 or 4 years of doing this stuff because you haven't moved forward. So this stuff can mess with your head if you take it too seriously and yourself too seriously. It's not supposed to be anything other than the reason why it's called a rabbit hole because you do fall down it, but you can come out the other end pretty quickly and go down another one. It's just awareness, I think, in the end, isn't it, Wayne?
Yeah, it's awareness and discernment, and that's the important thing is being
Mm,
able to discern. Okay, I know what they're telling me is a lie. You could leave it right there. So you could any more detail that they give you about that lie, you know the foundation itself is faulty. So why would you believe anything else that they're telling you about that? So just drop it right there. And this is something that people need to entrain their minds to do, especially those with the more conspiratorial mindset. Now I've been there, and of course we've both gone down rabbit trails before, Richard, haven't we? Where
mm.
we look at all of these different angles to things, and there's always an occult side, and there's a reason for this. They want you to go down those rabbit trails because, first of all, it keeps you distracted from the other things they're doing to move forward. It's a type of revelation of the method. So, therefore, it supplies more power or energy to whatever the performance is that they put forward. So, it also creates this state of confusion, which is exactly what they're looking for. It creates division, and that's what they feed off of, essentially. That's where this energetic nuance goes to. When you have somebody on one side who's saying, "Hey, wait, everything's a conspiracy. Look here, look there, look at this, look at that." And then you have the other side that says, "You're just too distrusting of people and your government and everything else, and why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense." And they're the ones that'll largely tell you just follow the money. They recognize that portion of it, but essentially it just keeps people divided, and it keeps this chaos alive, if you want to call it that. It feeds this egregore type spirit. And of course, central to all of this right now is this whole Zionist movement. This has been going on for a long time, since at least 1897, I think, is when the term Zionism was truly defined first
Yeah.
and has been promulgated and put forward. So I think maybe we should go ahead and give a definition
Yep.
to Zionism. According to the Oxford Dictionary, Zionism is a political movement for the reestablishment and development of a Jewish nation in what is now Israel. Originally, it was aimed at establishing an independent Jewish state. It now supports the development and protection of the state of Israel, and the term Zion comes from one of the biblical names for Jerusalem. So, in looking at the etymology of the word Zion, because this is important too. People often overlook etymology
Mm.
in things. Let me just do a quick search on Zion etymology.
One of the things that I can't find this, so maybe you'll come up with this, is I read a while ago, one of the interpretations was it came from scion, which means to graft onto, which sounded kind of right to me, but I couldn't find it since then. So maybe me, I was mistaken, but scion with an S would,
Here we go. I
yeah.
found, here's what it means here. Now, Skion, well, this is Sion. This is where it's derived from a Hebrew word Sion, Siyyon, and it meant castle or fortress.
Mm.
So this is an interesting connotation, fortress. Now, most people aren't going to touch this with a 10-foot pole, but if you want to define what this is about, you can go back to Alexander Hislop's work, The Two Babylons, and you could find that fortress has an importance in that work because it's a description of a god called Baal Hazor, the Lord of Fortresses, which can be directly linked back to Nimrod in the Bible. So this is an interesting connotation in and of itself. So the fortress, the Lord of Fortresses. So Zion, this is the fortress of Nimrod. And if you want to take a little bit of a background into who Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord. This was the guy that built the Tower of Babel and sought to climb to the top and slay God and take his place. That's who Nimrod was. So this was Baal Hazor, also known as Baal in many of the old pagan mysteries. Baal Hazor, the Lord of Fortresses. So that should tell you a little bit of something about what are some of the connotations and connections to Zionism. Zion,
Mhm.
that's where it comes from. It's always important to look into etymology for this. I didn't find that term that you were talking about with the SC, Skyon. What did you say that meant from what you had
Of
seen?
what I could see, it was to graft onto. It was almost like leeching off
Okay.
of, yeah.
So
Um,
grafting onto that has an important connotation too. So it's grafting onto this religious philosophy that's known as Judaism and using that as the fortress to protect the spirit within, which conflates with Nimrod in the Bible, the spirit of Zion, this egregore. So if you want to go back and look at the cult of Baal and some of
mm,
the associated things thereof, you can know a little more about what is the spirit behind this. And of course, it's all about sowing this discord in people and this division and trying to scapegoat another important concept, a particular people group. And that people group, of course, is the Jews.
yep.
The anti Semitic philosophy comes from Zionism. It's all based in Zionism. And the scapegoat is another important concept, maybe we'll touch on here as to
Yeah.
where.
Well, there's a picture out there, a very famous picture. Well, it's not very famous, but I've tried to make it famous. Of a picture of he's Trump. Donald Trump dressed as well, it's a CGI AI thing, but it was put out by his son. I think it was Donald Trump Jr. on Instagram. He's wearing the red tie and the goat's head. He is the scapegoat. He's telling you, and this isn't Donald Trump's son that's put this out. This isn't just any old body. So they are telling you that he's leading whoever he's leading at the moment is the evangelical Christians, because really, there's a sliver of paper between evangelical Christians and Zionists right now. I mean, I would hazard to try and tell the difference between them in a room. So he is leading them off a cliff for his Zion masters, which really the Zion comes underneath the Crown Corporation as well. If you really want to go too deep into who they are, it was the British that gave um, the Rothschilds that bit of land to create modern day Jerusalem, which was at the time Palestine, I believe. So there's hierarchies here. You look into the black nobility and families, the Vatican, and as you say there, the Vatican Catholic Church, and it's not the Catholic Church, it's a section within it again. That rings back to Nimrod, Babylon, the cult of Babylon. It always
Right.
comes back to the same place.
It does, and that's an important thing to understand because we're going to look at the Babylonish Talmud, which predates the Talmud that's used by modern Judaism. And we're going to find out about this from a book titled Ceremonies, Customs, Rites, and Traditions of the Jews, interspersed with gleanings from the Jerusalem and Babylonish Talmud and the Targums, Mishnah, Gemara, Malanides, Rabbanel, Zohar, Aben Ezra, Oral Law, also a copious selection from some other different works. And this is written by a guy named Hayam B. What's his name here again? Hold on. Hayam B. Isaacs. This was written in 1794. He was a Jew who converted to Christianity, and he was a scholar who was very much held in high esteem by those in the Jewish circles. So, understanding that and now knowing where that comes from, we're going to go ahead and see a little something about the notion of the scapegoat. So, according to what this guy tells us about the Babylonish Talmud, it says that when the Jews were in the wilderness, Moses and Aaron and the elders met together to hold a consultation and also to contemplate what measures they should adopt in order to make friends with Satan and so prevent him from going to God with accusations on the day of expiation. Satan agreed with them that if they would present him with a sacrifice, then he would no longer be a talebearer on that day of expiation. When Moses and the elders agreed to his proposition and engaged to give him a scapegoat every year. So, this is according to the Babylonish Talmud, according to this Isaacs fellow, written in 1794. And this is an interesting thing because he describes in this that what is said to have happened is Satan is a great talebearer, and he went to God every day to accuse the Jewish people of various things. So they kind of struck a deal with Satan, according to what this says. Now, this, of course, you have to take this with a grain of salt because you're not going to find much other reference to anything like this in any of the mainstream circles. And they will try to frame this as being anti Semitic and every other thing. But this is where the notion of the idea of the scapegoat comes from. It was in order that on the day of expiation, Satan didn't make accusations against them so
Mm.
that they could be held accountable for sins of their past and things like that. And this is, of course, according to this Talmud, which predates much of what we have in modern Judaism. So much of what we have in modern Judaism comes post AD 70 with the destruction of the temple. And this is also important to understand too, because there's a lot of archetypes present in all of that that will make a lot more sense to anybody who has deeply studied some of these ancient cultures and the mystery teachings thereof, including the Egyptian mythology. And we'll touch on that in a minute. I just want to hear what your thoughts are on what I just read there.
Am I right in saying, Wayne, that this kind of redemption for their sins type thing is Yom Kippur every year? Am I right in saying that?
I think so. Yes,
It is,
that's
yeah. Because
major holiday to celebrate.
that's it. Because this year, I don't know if you know, over here in the UK, I'm sure you do know this. There was the attack on the synagogue on Yom Kippur, and
I
that
remember
was.
that.
So I'm looking at it straight away again. Oh, it's a Muslim guy with a strap loads of gun on, and he's gone in and killed a lot of people, and he's and it blames the Muslims, and obviously it drags that in here in the UK, tackle the synagogue. But I straight away are going, well, that's Yom Kippur. That's basically a Jewish tradition where they sacrifice for their own sins. So I would see that as that guy, being part of this Zionist cult, as opposed to being actually a real, I would say he's crypto Sabbatean as opposed to actually Muslim, because what benefit would that bring the Muslims? Oh, you could say, oh, they've killed a few of those of the Jewish faith, but that's not going to do them any good in this country. That's actually benefiting who benefits. It was actually the Jews of the Zionists, really, not the Jews, because they're canon fodder too. The Zionists, the Sabbateans benefited from that because it made them look sympathetic, but on that date. So when you look at these things, oh, what a tangled web they weave. But when you really understand it, it's like that guy didn't, to me, was more of a Sabbatean and a Zionist than actually a Muslim, because he was doing it on the date when they have to give sacrifice for their own sins. I mean,
All the world is a stage, Richard, and
it is.
you always see that when you could look at the bigger view of all of this. Exactly what you're pointing out is the logical fallacy in all of it. Is it a coincidence that it just so happens to align with the Jewish holy day? Is it a coincidence that it would benefit those Sabbateans, as
Hmm.
you call them, more so than say Muslims or Islam or anything of that sort? Does it really give any type of, I don't know, reverence to Islam, something like this? Really doesn't. What's the benefit? Well, when you realize that the players on the world stage are manipulated by this egregore of Zionism, then you could begin to understand a little better how the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. And that's where we're at with a lot of this. And you could trace a lot of this back to this Babylonian culture that existed in prior generations here. And this is Mystery Babylon, as many people call it. That's what's going on. That's what Zionism is at the heart of, this Mystery Babylon religion, for lack of better terms. It's not really a religion, it's a pseudo religion that has piggybacked on the back of other mainstream world religions for the longest time and has used them as a type of a shield. And there's your red shield right
Yep.
there. It uses religious belief systems as a shield to deflect the blame towards specific people groups. And they've weaponized it in many different ways. And we can't emphasize this point enough. Zionism and Judaism are two separate things, but they are often conflated, just like the nation state, the Zionist nation state of Israel, is conflated with the Israel of the Bible. They're not the same thing.
Hmm.
There's a different spirit undergirding all of it. And that's the important point we need to make. And of course, speaking like this in mainstream circles would get you branded as an anti Semite, wouldn't it?
Well, it would, but
Yeah.
the whole
It,
point is because, well, they could brand you as anti-Semite, but as I said, explain to me what you think a Semite is. Because a Semite is a group of languages largely Arabic, which would apply to the Palestinians. So you ain't even got that terminology right. So the whole point is that your whole logical argument is a fallacy from top to bottom.
all
All of
exactly.
it.
It's confusion. It's
Yeah.
Kabbalah with a K, confusion, like we covered on episode 2 of Syncromystic. It's right there. It's all out there in the open, but people can't look past the surface veneer of things to see what underlies all of it. And
Yep.
of course, it's all the same things, all dressed up in a different costume for each performance or each time period that we go through. It's all the same things. It's all the same archetypes that were present back in the Egyptian iconography as well. We were talking about the feminine aspect, the Shekinah, the Queen of Heaven. This is Isis.
Yep.
Isis Unveiled. Why do you think Helena Petrovna Blavatsky called her book Isis Unveiled? This is what it's revealing. It's this feminine side of the Godhead that's being reverenced here or being kind of weaponized against us by this Zionist spirit. In a sense, it's the female side of the Godhead, like I said. And this is where all the magicians will tell you the real power, the source of power comes from, is from this feminine side, this feminine energy that is present there. It's the Shekinah, it's the Queen of Heaven, it's Isis behind
Absolutely.
the
Yeah. That.
being shown out in the public view at this time. It's the Revelation, the book of Revelation. We're living in the time of Revelation right now. All these things that went on behind the veil in the dark in the past are now right here out in the open, and people still can't see it for what it is.
That's a really fascinating point, actually, and a really important point that everybody's looking when it says Messiah, and I do this, so I'm not any any different. They look for a male. It's going to be a male, straight away male. But when you look at all the Freemasons, everything it's the Great Queen. They say the Great Architect doesn't say anything about being a male. It says the Great Queen. They worship the Great Queen. It's on Great Queen Street, the Grand Lodge in the UK. Semiramis, Isis, same character. The Virgin Mary, all the same character. There's this archetype, as you say again. and that has Osiris mixed in there, being the male part of it as well, and the penis of Osiris. That's why you have it in the Vatican. These are the same, and they use the Trinity as well, and they've used some of Horus's, which is their son, I believe. Some of his story they've implanted onto the Jesus character, which I think there was a. I've come to think that there was a man called Jesus or Yeshua, but they've put a lot of this story on top of him and covered over actually what he was really about. I think that's confusion again. They've basically superimposed much of the Babylonian Trinity and all of this on top of what is Christianity today. So is it really the same religion? If you're changing these aspects of it, if you know what I mean, if you what does that mean? If you're changing all the aspects of a being, it becomes something else. It's not the same being anymore. So that's almost like a shape-shifting thing, really. So it's fascinating to watch what they've done with it, but we have unpicked it pretty, I think, pretty bloody well. I think as a community in terms of the conspiracy world, people get stuck in it. But you say these alchemical principles are really important because the confusion that not knowing the content that we put over here in the show creates the egregore that allows Zionism to move forward with this agenda, which is a messianic agenda that goes back to this Babylonian cult. That confusion is only possible, which creates the egregore, because people don't understand what was hidden in the mystery schools.
Exactly. And right now they're using this Zionist type of egregore as the means and mode to get things done. And at the heart of this, it does use Judaism as a kind of mask to deflect blame onto a specific people group, like we've talked about.
Hmm.
And this is the important thing. And so many people will say it's the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. And it's not. Yes, there is a Jewish portion of that involved, and they weaponize those belief systems to bring about these changes and leverage them against the human mind or the public consciousness, and that's what's being done. But you can't blame a whole people group, and that's exactly what has been done and what is the modus operandi of the weaponized system of it being used by these people in control. Now, who are these people? Would you agree that they're the Chabad Lubavitch cult, essentially, are the
I
main ones? Well, let's break down Chabad. Chabad is an acronym derived from the three Hebrew words Hokmah, which means wisdom, Bina, which means understanding, and Dayat, knowledge, or
data.
the the gnosis, the divine knowledge, the data, as you've represented before. And this represents the first three Sephiroth of the Kabbalistic tree of life after the the one that's called Keter. Keter.
Mhm.
So the Jewish system teaches. Now, this is since AD 70. This is what the Kabbalah teaches about Judaism. The Torah, or not the Torah, the Zohar
Yeah.
teaches about Judaism in the modern era. It teaches that the divine feminine, also known as the Hebrew goddess, the queen of heaven, Matrona, the bride of Yahweh, Asherah, only resides with the Jewish people. And after 70 AD, after the destruction of the temple, they claim that it fled to reside in that wall and will not come out until after the Messiah arrives. So the Wailing Wall, the wall that they all go to and worship at, this is the reason why they believe that that divine feminine resides in that wall since the destruction of the temple. And it's all fallacy
Mm.
and it's all
It is.
nonsense. But this is where the egregore primarily manifests some of its energy from. And that's why it's you have so much importance, especially in Christian eschatology, placed on the location of the temple and the rebuilding of the temple. It's not about a literal temple, okay? This is where people get it wrong. Even devout Christians, they're looking for all of these signs. They're looking for the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, the sacrifice of the red heifer, all this stuff to go on. It's all distraction, it's all Zionist propaganda in order to affect your mind. What it really represents is the human body. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God?
Mm.
It's all about defiling the temple of God. That's the human body, the human being. So all of these things are just set pieces in order to bring about that defilement of the human being. It's not the super sign that people are looking for. And a lot of people are going to be misled by a lot of this stuff. And that's why they place such emphasis on this, because they're taking an exoteric description of an esoteric thing at literal face value. That's what's going on. And that happens so much
Hmm.
across all of these different types of ways of thinking. So I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that too, Richard.
What's fascinating you brought up there was the breakdown of the name Habad. So it's Shokma, Binar, and Dayat. Now we've figured out that Dayat is modern day data. It's an anagram. Um, so data is today's knowledge. It's hidden knowledge. It's the data that they want. Binar is understanding, which is grok. Grok means to understand. So we have grok, we have data, but chokma, which is wisdom. That is Shekinah, am I not right? I believe that she represents, or Sophia, again, which is Earth.
Right? The
Am
divine.
I right in saying that?
Well, they all represent this. Baina, understanding, is said to be the feminine side, the feminine pillar.
Okay.
But of course, Hokmah, you're pronouncing Chakma, that's how it's spelled. It's pronounced Hokmah.
Okay. Yep.
That does mean wisdom, and of course, it is concurrent with Lady Wisdom, Sophia, of the Theosophical Society and of all of these different types of occult principles that speak of Lady Wisdom, the Queen of Heaven. All of this, it all represents the same thing. It's the archetype of Isis. It goes back to all the Egyptian iconography because that's some of the oldest stuff that we have that we could look at to give a more clear picture of what it is they're describing. This is the archetypal level of things where you could look at this stuff. And Egypt, the Egyptian mysteries are said to be the most perfected set of mystery teachings that we still have even today, going back closest to the source of this information. So that's why they always harken back to the Egyptian on all of these different things. That's why even in Freemasonry, there's the rites of Mizraim, and Memphis. They're high degree rites of Freemasonry because it goes back and it studies the iconography of ancient Egypt, the Egyptian mysteries. It harkens back to that. That's why there's always so much emphasis placed on Egypt in this world. Look at even with this whole thing that happened in Gaza now, this alleged peace treaty or whatever that they're supposedly putting the deal together for. Where did Trump go to institute that? Egypt.
Yeah.
Why would you go to Egypt to do that? It always plays back to this. Who were who were the Israeli people back in the Bible enslaved by for a long time? Well,
Yep.
the Egyptians. Think about it. This is stuff people don't look at. They don't even think about that in the modern era. But the iconography is there, and it's always front and center for a reason. And that's one of the reasons why. So certainly this underlies everything. You have the Egyptian mythos underlying it, and if you don't understand anything else, go back and look at the Egyptian myths. Go read about Isis and Osiris and their progeny Horus and all of the different things associated with that myth. You even touched on it yourself, Typhon Set. That's all there too.
Yep.
It's all right there, and you have the number 14 present there as well because Osiris was cut up into 14 pieces, and the 14th piece, his missing phallus, well, Isis used a magical rite to craft a gold phallus for him so that she could bear the child Horus from him. And this is the 14th, the missing piece, the lost word of Freemasonry. Okay, so if you don't take anything else away from that, go back and look at the Egyptian myths, and it'll give you a clearer view of the archetypes that are always present on the world stage. They could always be related back to the Egyptian myths. Always.
Oh, absolutely. Crowley, the Age of Horus. He was absolutely, bringing that Jack Parsons, bringing about the Moon Child. We've discussed that in New Mexico, not far from Zorro Ranch, where I still think they're trying to do the same here. Rosemary's Baby, the same thing. This is all about bringing this stuff into our world. But this has been another absolutely fascinating hour and a bit of the show, and we'll hopefully be back in the next few weeks again with another one where people can find your work and support everything you're doing. I know you're working on a new book too.
Yeah, all of my work could be found over at www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com, and I've also set up Syncromystic on that page as well. So if people want to check out this broadcast, you could go right to that website and find us there as well. The episodes will all populate right there in the episode list, and I have links over to the Spotify link to it, as well as the YouTube channel and everything else that goes with it as well. So where could the good people find you, Richard?
They can find me. Well, you also got a Substack as well, which people should go over and support Wayne on his Substack because he's regularly posting on there as well. You can find me on Substack, which is Some May Conspire, or just put Richard Willett and you'll find me. And iconic.com for most of my video content. My weekly shows go on there. And at the moment, and I'm working on a book at the moment, which goes along my last film, I Am Immortal, talks about the death cult's obsession with staying alive forever. You think death cult, they're obsessed with dying. No, they're terrified of dying, and they want to stay alive forever. So I look into that in my first book. I haven't done a book before, and I've really wanted to do one for years. And it's been one of those ones where, I think I've stopped myself from doing it. So I'm about 80,000 words into it now. So hopefully it'll be done by Christmas. But yeah, they're the places, and we thank you for all your support. You're not going to hear this stuff anywhere else. This is really the stuff they hid in the mystery schools. I don't know. Maybe me and Wayne fell asleep in one, and it all went through osmosis into our brains at one point, or I don't know, one of our previous incarnations is buried underneath one somewhere. But this stuff isn't. It's coming out, and people are starting to understand this now. There's a race on, the human race.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Always a pleasure, Richard. We'll do this again in a couple weeks, hopefully a little sooner this time than the
Yes, it's
previous
kid,
break.
it's kids, isn't it? Kids running around. You've got more than I have. I will see you in a few weeks. Take care. Remember to comment below, subscribe, and share this podcast. Take care. Goodbye.